Mikel Arteta is standing in front of the media and his answers are telling you everything without actually telling you anything. The manager is calm, measured, deliberately vague. And that in itself is a signal worth paying close attention to. Because right now, Arsenal are preparing to walk into St. Mary's Stadium for one of the most consequential nights of their season, a Football Association Cup quarter-final. A chance to reach Wembley for the second time in a single season. And the man tasked with getting them there is dealing with an injury list so long that even naming it out loud feels uncomfortable. The situation is this. Arsenal go into tonight knowing that as many as 14 players could be missing from the squad. 14. That is not a minor inconvenience. That is not a rotation headache. That is a structural crisis being managed in real time by one of the most tactically disciplined managers in world football. And yet, there is something fascinating happening here. Because despite the chaos behind the scenes, despite the sheer number of names absent from training pictures and withdrawn from international duty, Arteta is not panicking. He is not rushing. He is not making excuses. Instead, he is carefully managing expectations while simultaneously refusing to confirm anything. That is the art of elite management. And tonight, that art will be put to its most serious test of the season. The evidence suggests that what happens at St. Mary's tonight will define the next chapter of Arsenal's season. Not just in terms of the trophy, but in terms of belief, momentum, and the psychological foundation needed to close out a Premier League title race that still has everything to play for. So let us break this down properly. Let us talk about what is actually at stake, who is actually available, what Arteta is actually thinking, and why this night matters far more than just a place in the Final Four. To understand the weight of tonight, you need to understand where Arsenal currently sit. The quadruple is gone. That dream ended in the Carabao Cup final against Manchester City. A defeat that clearly hurt and one that Arteta has openly addressed. His words were precise. He said the group took that defeat on board, not as a wound, but as fuel. His exact approach was to use the result as tools for the final push of the season. That tells you the mentality he is demanding from his squad. But here is what makes tonight so loaded. Arsenal have reached the Football Association Cup quarter-final for just the second time in the last 9 seasons. That context alone tells you this is not a routine cup run. This is rare territory for a club with 14 Football Association Cup titles to their name. Getting to this stage was already an achievement. Throwing it away now would be more than a sporting disappointment. A win tonight puts Arsenal at Wembley. Semi-final football at the National Stadium. A genuine shot at completing a domestic double alongside the Premier League title they are chasing. That is the prize. That is what failure to deliver tonight would cost this group. And the opposition is not a formality. Southampton, currently competing in the Championship, have not just scraped through to this stage. They eliminated Doncaster, Leicester City and Premier League side Fulham to get here. Under their current manager, Tonda Eckert. They have won 11 of their last 14 matches in all competitions. They are a team in form, a team with belief, and they are playing at home. This is why tonight matters. The gap between ambition and reality for Arsenal is being tested at this exact moment. If you want serious, deep analysis of what is happening at this club, then this is exactly the kind of story you need to stay with. If you are watching this and you are not subscribed yet, hit that subscribe button right now. Because the analysis coming up in the second half of this video is where it gets really interesting. The lineup decisions, the injury situation, the manager's thinking, and what it all means for the rest of Arsenal's season. Do not miss it. Let us start with the injury situation. Because without understanding this, nothing else about tonight makes sense. The reality for the club is that the international break did not go smoothly. Far from it. Arteta confirmed that as many as 12 players missed the international break entirely due to injury. 12 first-team players. Gone. Not available for their national teams. And when asked directly about who would be available for tonight, the manager gave one of the most deliberately evasive press conference answers you will hear all season. He was asked whether players withdrawing from international duty would affect his squad for this game. His response was that the situation was clear, that medical decisions were made honestly with national teams, and that he would let the selection do the talking. He then literally invited the media to judge him afterwards. That is not a manager who is confident in his numbers. That is a manager doing everything possible to protect information in a high-stakes moment. 2 names were specifically given some clarity. Martin Ødegaard and Ødegaard Timber were both described as being in contention to possibly be in the squad. That phrase, in contention to possibly, is doing a lot of heavy lifting. It means available, but not guaranteed. It means they are being assessed right up to match day. And for Ødegaard in particular, the implication is significant. The captain's return, even in a limited capacity, would change the dynamic of this Arsenal side considerably. Noni Madueke suffered an injury during the international period. When asked how serious it was, Arteta said it looked really bad in the moment, and that Madueke himself was worried, especially in light of a previous knee issue that kept him out for 6 weeks. But the manager clarified the current injury is nowhere near as serious as that previous one, and suggested it would only be a matter of days before the forward is back. So Madueke is almost certainly not starting tonight, but the longer-term damage appears limited. Eberechi Eze is a different story. When asked about his availability, Arteta was unusually candid in his uncertainty. He said he cannot put a finger on a return date because Eze is, in his words, a special character. That phrasing is the kind of language managers use when an injury is unpredictable or when the recovery is not following a typical path. Izzy appears to be genuinely absent for the foreseeable future without a clear timeline. Piero Hincapié was also raised in the press conference. Arteta confirmed that yes, the injury was serious. When pushed on how long the defender would be out, the manager said he does not know. That is the most concerning update of the lot for Arsenal supporters. A serious injury with no confirmed return date is exactly the kind of news that forces a manager to reshape his defensive planning for the rest of a season. Now let us talk about the goalkeeper question, because Arteta handled this with almost theatrical precision. He was asked directly whether the goalkeeper tonight would be Spanish and have a name ending in the letter A. What he said in response was that the goalkeeper would be European, under 32 years of age, right-footed, and speaks at least 2 languages. He refused to confirm or deny. But the evidence suggests Kepa Arrizabalaga is the man who starts in goal tonight. The reasoning behind this is a matter of principle for Arteta. Despite Kepa's high-profile error in the Carabao Cup final against Manchester City, the manager appears committed to the rotation structure he has established between his 2 goalkeepers. David Raya, despite being the #1 in many observers' eyes, is not automatically brought back just because his deputy made a mistake in a final. That is the kind of managerial consistency that either builds trust or tests patience, depending on which side of the debate you stand on. It is now clear that the lineup for tonight will feature significant changes from what Arsenal would consider their strongest 11. The combination of injuries, player workloads during the international break, and the looming Champions League clash with Sporting CP means that Arteta is being forced to balance competition priorities in real time. Let us go through the predicted lineup and what it tells us about the manager's decision-making. Starting in goal, as discussed, the evidence points toward Kepa Arrizabalaga taking his place between the posts. At right back, Ben White is expected to start. The situation around White is worth acknowledging separately because his return to the England setup became a talking point during the international period. Arteta was asked about the reported negative reaction from the crowd when White appeared for England. The manager said the volume was turned down, so he personally could not hear it. But he noted that White came back smiling, positive, full of good words about the national team camp, about the meetings, and about manager Thomas Tuchel. Arteta's view is simple. When you send a player to a national team, you want them to come back better, happier, fitter. By his assessment, Ben White came back exactly that way. At centre-back, the predicted pairing is Christian Mosquera, alongside Gabriel. Mosquera is a particularly interesting inclusion here. The situation is that Mosquera recently made his senior debut for the Spanish national team, coming into a Football Association Cup quarter-final on the back of that kind of milestone moment, carries its own psychological energy. He will be full of confidence, and this is a significant opportunity for him to demonstrate that he belongs at this level consistently. William Saliba is expected to be rotated out of this particular game, with one eye on the Champions League match against Sporting CP on Tuesday. Arteta essentially confirmed this line of thinking when he said that between Saliba and Gabriel, only one of them is likely to play in this cup game, given what is coming midweek. At left-back, the evidence suggests Ricardo Calafiori is a potential option, but Miles Lewis-Skelly could come in. Lewis-Skelly, who is 19 years old, had an impressive showing for the England under-21 side against Moldova during the break. With Calafiori having played significant minutes for Italy, Arteta may well give the youngster the nod to protect his Italian defender's legs. In central midfield, the expectation is that Christian Norgard features. Norgard saw his World Cup hopes effectively end during the international period, which is a deeply personal blow for any professional footballer. But the reality for the player now is that this Football Association Cup quarter-final represents a significant opportunity. Declan Rice and Martin Zubimendi are clearly being managed carefully given the schedule ahead. Norgard gets his chance to show his value and accumulate vital minutes. Kai Havertz is also predicted to feature in the midfield area. With the squad stretched as it is, and with Arteta needing energy and versatility in the middle of the park, Havertz is a player whose ability to play across multiple positions becomes extremely valuable in these moments. Martin Ødegaard is the name that will generate the most attention in any predicted lineup. The captain, who has been sidelined with injury, is described as potentially returning to start here. This would be his road back to full fitness and form at exactly the right time in the season. Arteta's view on the matter was characteristically cautious, describing Ødegaard and Timber as being in contention, but not making any definitive statement. What is clear is that if Ødegaard is fit enough to start, Arteta will want him on the pitch. Not just for what he offers tactically, but for what his presence does to the mood and belief of the group around him. On the right wing, the absence of both Bukayo Saka and Noni Madueke opens the door for Max Dalman. The situation with Dalman is one of the more exciting subplots of Arsenal's season. The young forward scored a notable goal during the international break with England's under-19 side. Gabriel Jesus himself has reportedly called Dalman's talent crazy, which is the kind of endorsement that carries genuine weight inside a dressing room. Tonight could be a defining moment in Dalman's development. Playing in a Football Association Cup quarter-final, with all the pressure and expectation that comes with it, is a test that most young players wait years for. He has been handed it early. How he responds will tell us a great deal. Gabriel Martinelli on the left is arguably the most straightforward selection in this entire lineup. The evidence here is overwhelming. Martinelli has been Arsenal's Football Association Cup performer this season. 4 goals and an assist in just 3 ties against Portsmouth, Wigan and Mansfield Town. He also scored during a brief international cameo for Brazil against Croatia during the break. He has scored twice in his last 3 appearances against Southampton specifically. If there is one player on this pitch tonight who carries genuine threat against Southampton from a statistical standpoint, it is the Brazilian winger. Up front, Gabriel Jesus is the predicted starter. Victor Gyökeres played significant international football for Sweden during the break, helping his country qualify for the World Cup. Arteta acknowledged this directly, saying Gyökeres came back full of energy and confidence, but that kind of exertion over an international window requires proper management. Jesus, fully rested and not burdened by international duty in the same way, walks into the starting position tonight. Now let us look at Southampton and what they bring to this contest. The situation is that this is not a championship side simply making up the numbers. Under Tonda Eka, they have built something real. 11 wins from their last 14 games in all competitions, 3 consecutive championship victories that have pushed them firmly into playoff contention. They arrived at this stage of the Football Association Cup having beaten Premier League side Fulham, which is not a minor achievement for a second-tier team. Southampton last won the Football Association Cup in the 1975-76 season. That is 50 years ago. This is a club and a fan base that knows what this occasion means historically. The commemorative yellow and blue kit they are wearing tonight, celebrating that iconic anniversary, tells you everything about the emotional context they are playing in. St. Mary's will be sold out, the atmosphere will be intense, and Southampton will believe. Arteta himself acknowledged all of this in his press conference. He said the Saints are in a really good moment, that they have won so many games recently, and that the crowd and environment they will create is something Arsenal must be ready for. That is a manager who respects the opposition without overstating them. A manager who is preparing his players psychologically as much as tactically. He was also asked about a previous run at the end of the 2023 to 2024 season, when Arsenal won 16 out of 18 games. He addressed this directly, saying the group looks back at those moments to understand what worked and what can be built upon. But he was careful to note this is a different group in a different situation. The self-awareness in that answer is important. Arteta is not relying on historical momentum. He is building something present, immediate, and specific to this squad right now. There is also the psychological dimension of recovering from the Carabao Cup final defeat to Manchester City. Arteta was asked directly whether he is concerned about a knock-on effect from that loss. His answer was one of the most revealing moments of the entire press conference. He said the experience of not winning that final should make the group stronger for the final push. That the mindset after the defeat was immediately about using it as fuel. That the group sensed that energy immediately after the final whistle. He talked about analysing not just that one game, but the last 120 days, looking at the winning ratio, the things accomplished to give perspective, while simultaneously being critical about what can be done better. That is the mindset of a manager who has not allowed a single defeat, even in a cup final, to destabilise his operation. That is a man who knows exactly what he is doing. There was also a moment in the press conference that deserves its own acknowledgement. Arteta was asked about Riccardo Calafiori and Italy failing to qualify for the World Cup. Rather than offering a brief diplomatic response, Arteta went deeper. He spoke about trying to lift Calafiori personally, about how for Italy, for football, for a nation with such passion and such history, not being at a World Cup is genuinely painful. He said he knows it is good for the competition overall, but that it shows you the difficulty of earning the right to be there. That kind of individual attention to a player's emotional state, publicly articulated, tells you something about how this manager operates behind the scenes. Viktor Gyökeres, by contrast, comes back in a completely different emotional state. He helped Sweden reach the World Cup and scored important goals in the process. Arteta said Gyökeres returned full of energy and confidence. That is a player who arrives back at the club riding a wave. Whether that energy is channeled into tonight's game from the bench or preserved for the bigger fixtures ahead is a tactical decision that only Arteta can make. And then there is Bukayo Saka. Arteta was asked specifically about Saka's statistics this season and whether there is cause for concern. The manager's response was unambiguous. He said he is certain the final part of this season is where Saka and others will be remembered. He spoke about the last 8 weeks being the period that defines what has been built across the full campaign. What was done in October and November, he said, is irrelevant now. It is about the present. It is about the final push. That is a manager drawing a clear line in the sand. Past performances, both good and disappointing, do not dictate what happens from this point forward. The next 8 weeks are what matter. That philosophy applies directly to tonight. It does not matter that Arsenal have faced a growing injury list. It does not matter that the Carabao Cup final was lost. What matters is whether the players who step onto that pitch at St Mary's do their jobs. Whether they impose themselves on a motivated championship side playing in front of a sold-out home crowd. Whether they take one more step toward Wembley. The evidence suggests Arsenal will make the changes necessary to protect certain players while still fielding a lineup capable of winning this game. The combination of Ødegaard potentially returning, Martinelli in devastating cup form, Dalman ready for his moment, and a squad motivated by the desire to prove something after the Carabao Cup disappointment gives Arsenal real reason for confidence. But Southampton are not just there to make the numbers. They are in form, they are at home, and they have history as their motivation. The situation is perfectly set for an intense, competitive, high-stakes evening of football. The kind of night that Football Association Cup quarterfinals were made for. This is the moment Arsenal find out whether their squad depth is genuinely ready for the demands of a free-front season. Whether the players stepping in for those who are absent can deliver when it truly matters. Whether the culture Arteta has built at this club is deeper than the starting 11 alone. Tonight at St Mary's, we find out.